And we're live. My name is Andrew, the Citizen 1776. And with me, as always, is Brady the War Hamster and Douglas V. Gibbs, the constitutional poet, which you didn't know it, or a scholar, however you want to put that. But, anyways, um, thank you for joining us tonight. I see where we have three in there looking to grow. I just put a bunch of information on Twitter. I put all the shows from the past on Twitter and looking to put more in there. And Brady, I saw you put some stuff recently on Twitter, which was interesting. Maybe you could elaborate on that tonight. And Doug, I saw you started following me, so there's a positive. And yeah, well, let's get the show going.
Yeah, first time I've logged into Twitter in a long time just to follow you guys.
See, we're helping you out. See, I got you into Instagram, and now we're getting you back into Twitter. So,
yeah, I stirred up the pot today on Twitter.
What'd you do?
There was some commentary about how Biden is going after semiotic weapons and stuff like that, and somebody decided to post a meme, a quote from Justice Berger talking about how basically the purpose of the Second Amendment was only to make sure the militia was always armed. And I responded with, I'd rather trust this guy. And I posted the meme of Thomas Jefferson's quote saying specifically that the right to bear arms was directly to ward off a tyrannical government. And that set off a fun little set of mentions. It's still going, probably.
Good job. Oh, man, I want to get some people upset, and I haven't been able to do it. But you did it, so. Which the goal is not to upset people. The goal is to educate.
Yeah, but if you're not ticking them off, you're probably not doing it right.
It's also true. True. Because
at least the crazy knuckleheads, they get all enraged and crazy and violent, and then they accuse you of being that.
Yeah. Well, if the first couple words in any tweet is MAGA Republicans or leftist commies, these are people that already have their minds made up. They're not trying to win hearts and minds. They're trying to win arguments. So you talk to the other people and give a reasonable choice. And what have I been saying? Left versus right is nothing but a distraction. And as long as you guys are going to sit there and play the game, we can't solve the riddle. So that's kind of the game I'm playing on Twitter. I don't think I'm going to be on there long term, but I'm kind of enjoying it right now, especially because I've been sick for the last 3 or 4 days, so I had a lot of fun.
Doug, was it James Madison that said basically he was talking about the party system, how it's not good, but yet we should have it. We should have it anyway, just because.
Well, it's not that we should have it. You can't get away from it.
Right.
Adams and Washington were very adamant how dangerous the two-party system is. Madison, before they even said that in Federalist 10, talked about how the factions, ideologies, party system, whatever you want to call it, but he called it factions, were with us because we naturally do it. While he saw it as something that could be dangerous, and especially if you allow one faction to get too much power or too much control, it could be very dangerous. So he suggested that the way to control it is to set them against each other, to make sure that the minority voice is always strong enough that the majority voice can never really get too much done. And what that does is that creates debate, it creates compromise, and I agree with Madison on that. I don't think it's something that we can necessarily get rid of. Now, that said, just because I don't think we can get rid of the factions going against each other, if there's two parties or whatever, it doesn't mean we have to hang on to the two parties that exist. In other words, there can be a system of parties or ideologies or factions or whatever you want to call them that could ultimately replace what we've got. Because part of the problem is, and we're seeing a lot of that now, is that while they claim to be on the different side of the aisle when it comes to issues, when it comes to the actual machination of the government, the cogs inside, they really are the same. They want to keep that apparatus going as it's been going because it's a power source for them.
Well, I'd say James Madison is actually spot on. Sorry, Brady, didn't mean to cut you off. But I mean, he's right though. It did kind of turn out into the Democratic Republican Party. if you think about it. And really, if
Well,
you
the
think
Democratic
about it,
Republican Party is not a name that showed up till the 1820s. I know historians like to call it that, but it was the Republican Party first.
well, I know,
And
but
they-
I'm talking about basically what happened is now, if you look at it, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are basically the same. They
become that,
act.
yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Well, when it comes to issues on the surface, there is a difference. And there is a difference in the sense that Republicans tend to have people who are not completely nuts more often than the Democrat Party does. But once again, when it comes to the establishment part of it, the McConnells, the McCarthys, and all of that, they're feeding from the same trough that the Democrats are, in the sense of power and the machine, the Leviathan itself.
If I may, from what I can see, the main difference, the Republicans appear to have more sane ideas because they have more sane voters who they've got to kowtow to.
Right.
But if you can't get rid of the political parties, what you can do is defund them, because that's how they wield their powers, through the power of the purse. And I've talked about my proposed amendment before, but as long as they can control, who gets elected by controlling the purse strings of the donors, you're not going to have any kind of representative government. It's going to be owned by the PACs and the multinational corporations. The last thing I wanted to say is, Doug, you talk about compromise and what was the other word you used? when you have a majority and a minority, you actually have to compromise. What we see instead is they trade favors, and that's where the
have to debate.
Yeah. Well, instead of that, we just basically get little huddles where you say, okay, I'll give you, I'm going to sell my vote, but you got to give me this, and that's where the pork and graft comes in, and that stuff's all got to stop. It's all about cleaning up the money.
Well, speaking on that is like with the gun issue. It seems like certain Republicans are this way, but then it's like, well, and some of them have admitted it that that they're like, well, I kind of give up this because I really want this, and it's like, no, we don't need to do that at all.
The problem there is earmarks and the favor trades, and that does need to be eliminated. I agree with the Warhamster here, and pork in particular, earmarks should be disallowed.
Yeah,
if a thing cannot stand alone as its own bill, it's got no business being in another bill.
Yeah, the best example we saw of that is the the anti-inflation bill, which is basically the Green New Deal dressed up with a different name. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous that passed muster, but we live in a corrupt system. But Doug, real quick, we've been remiss. Does not Andrew look very sharp tonight?
Yes, he looks very sharp.
Yeah, look, even his collar.
Yeah, I saw that.
I went and grabbed it. So.
As I'm slumming it in a sweatshirt.
I'm actually the bum tonight.
No, I got the sweatshirt going. You at least got a collar.
Yeah.
Can we make fun of Brady about it for about 1 minute? Can we admonish him?
Well, no, that's what happens when it's really cold in California. Down to the 60s.
Hey, it's cold here. It's like 75.
Yeah. I've been out sick for 4 days.
Well, hold on. No joke, Doug. Like, if you live here long enough, and I think in Tennessee I kind of felt it too, but you really noticed it down here. If you live here long enough, I'm wearing a blanket at 80. Like, it's insane. Whenever I go to Tennessee, whenever I end up going to Tennessee, I'm going to be, to visit family. I'm going to be like, with like 10 blankets or something. It's going to be.
Well, Southern California is warm, just like Florida. But the difference is we don't have the humidity. But I'll be honest with you. For me, the perfect weather is 68 degrees. If it's 68 outside, it's perfect.
My first concession to getting older was the last couple winters. I noticed that the winter in San Diego is too cold for me. And that's when you're soft, since we've got the most temperate climate in the world. But yeah, I freeze in the wintertime.
So to kind of, I guess, get off onto some topics, do y'all want to hear my update on my research into the Atomic Energy Commission?
Sure.
Please do.
So it's not complete. I think this is going to take decades to figure out, and here's why. I've kind of confirmed through some sources that, for one, that there's a high probability that a lot of the most top secret stuff are in the Department of Energy. aka the Atomic Energy Commission. The reason why, like, it's verified through a former government employee, Chris Mellon, that the Department of Energy has multiple multi-billion-dollar black projects that are currently going on. It's also been confirmed through Annie Jacobson, an investigative reporter, that the Atomic Energy Commission has done a lot of hiding of things for the government. Also, EG&G ran the maintenance, or kind of managed, Area 51 for like the longest time, and their Atomic Energy Commission and private industry. So there's multiple things that's pointing towards all the juicy stuff that the government's hiding. It doesn't have to be, aliens or whatever, which I don't believe in aliens, but you get my point. Like even let's say the election fraud or human trafficking, all of these things that like we can't seem to really find out, I guarantee you it'll be hidden in the place that you'd least expect it to be. The Atomic Energy, or the Department of Energy. Because also I found out through watching a video with Chris Mellon, who's verified. I mean, he's a reliable source for the most part. That from the way how things are, is that the Department of Energy is has the least oversight of any other department. So that's kind of what I got so far, as far as good, valid information.
And when we talk about oversight, who do we expect to provide oversight over these departments?
I mean,
theoretically, it's Congress, but
all right. Now, so why is it that we let the federal government serve as oversight over its own departments?
Because we're dumb. It should be us.
It used to be us through our states, through the U.S. Senate and the House, but the House has stopped being the voice of the people and has become a voice of the federal government, and the Senate is no longer a voice of the state. It's a voice of the federal government. And the reason why I bring this up is because I'm always challenged when people say, "Well, there should be oversight over that." By whom? We've got the enemy auditing and providing oversight for itself. I mean, that's the problem with judicial review. Judicial review is the federal government deciding for itself what its own authorities are through interpretation of a constitution that's not even theirs. It created them, but it belongs to us. And now, we see all these departments. Well, there's no oversight. Well, who's supposed to provide that oversight? The state legislatures and the people need to step up, because as long as the federal government is providing the oversight, we're not fixing a thing. We're saying, hey, they'll take care of themselves, right?
It's funny. I just got done watching a hour-long video from a guy I ordered a couple books from, and I'm going to pull up his name here real quick. Anyways, this guy was worked in he's deep state operative all the way. He worked for Kissinger, worked for Clinton in the State Department. He wrote his first book in 2009, and he correctly identified, basically, how I talk about, you got these ruling oligarchical families, this Game of Thrones on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this guy in his book says there's basically about 6,000 groups of super elites that really run the world. And I'm looking forward to his book, even though I'm not going to agree with him on a whole bunch, because this hour-long video I just watched of his guy's name is David Rothkopf. And it's going to be a fun read. He basically sat there at the book he just wrote was, I forget what it's called, but he was basically excusing all of the traitorous activity that the bureaucratic state did under Trump to undermine all of Trump's orders, because he makes the argument they were trying to protect the Constitution. These are good, honest people. And, he's talking about the same people that launched the first impeachment. He basically, what is her name? Nina Jankowicz, or, all those people. So this guy makes an entire excuse for that. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's going to be hard to stomach, but this is basically, it's a really keen insight into what the institutional administrative state, how they feel. They don't read the same Constitution as us. Some of them probably actually think they're doing the right thing, but they don't represent the people whatsoever. They represent the state. And that's the mentality. I'm trying to get inside that mentality even more.
Brady, watch out with saying the different constitution, because then people will start saying that there's another constitution out there.
Well, they're already following
there
one
is,
that's
but there isn't. I know what Andrew's trying to get at. There isn't a physically a second one like the conspiracy theorists 1871 people seem to say. But there is, in the sense that what we're following is some annotated version by the courts that isn't really what it says. It's what they have come up with. So
Well,
we have
whenever
theoretically there is, but not physically.
Well, whenever you emailed me forever ago, I don't know if you'll ever remember this, Doug, but you emailed me and actually told me your view on it. And it actually makes so much sense. When they talk about incorporation, they're talking about basically making DC a municipality, like making it, it has nothing to do with, and that made more sense to me, because I felt like I kind of go off of this thing where if I really have to search real hard to make something connect, it's either done hidden really well, or I'm misinterpreting it and I'm trying to make it work. If that makes sense. So
well, that sounds like a lot of the conspiracy theorists. They're misinterpreting it, but they're trying to make it work. And my first response usually is, how does that help the cause? First of all, aside from the fact of whether or not it's factual, how does it help the cause?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. It's that's better. I don't know. Do you like this, or do you want me to change it back? I don't know. I'm just playing with it. Okay. Well, I changed the view on it. I don't know if that actually makes a difference or not, but
well, the less of me I can see, the better. So
we'll just go back. It's fine. I was too close. Anyway.
Don't make me laugh.
Oh, I'm good at that. But anyway,
you're welcome, Brady.
Yeah.
I hung out with him last week and probably gave him what I had.
Now, I got this because when you're dating a woman who has a home daycare center, you're going to get sick a few times a year.
Anyway,
she's got she's got 6 incubation dishes running around her house all the time. I'm going to get sick.
Yeah, well, I've got grandkids in my house that gave it to me.
I call them tax benefits.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk about the doctor I had to deal with later, but go ahead.
Who, me?
Yeah, go ahead with what's
okay.
next. Before the end of the show, though, I am going to tack on my opinion of the 20-something doctor, little smug, arrogant, little.
Just let it rip right now.
Use that word.
Go ahead. Go. Have fun with it. All I was going to say was I call them tax benefits.
The kids,
they're tax benefits, yeah. So
mine aren't tax benefits, because mine are grown up and moved out, and their kids are their tax benefit, but they're still getting me sick because they're in my house.
Then you should claim them on your taxes.
He needs all the help he can get. He needs to claim them.
Okay. Anyway, all right.
But anyway, so I have a pretty good immune system. I typically don't get sick. When I do, I usually am able to kick it pretty quick, because I'm also someone who, while I'm not a complete health nut per se, there are things that I do to make sure I stay on top of it. I regularly take zinc, D3, so on and so forth. I've got my little daily regimen that I have of my own. Cinnamon and ginger roots, a couple of more things I love to make sure I take every day, and apple cider vinegar. But anyway, that all said, but when I do get sick, if it gets down into my lungs, in other words, if the upper respiratory infection becomes a lower respiratory infection, it takes me a long time to kick the cough. And so I know what it takes to get rid of it. But the problem is, all these damn doctors won't let you in unless you wear a mask in this area. And I can't wear a mask. I finally found one who, while they wanted me to wear a mask, were willing to allow me in as long as I waited outside for my appointment.
Did they spray you down with Lysol?
I surprised they didn't. My wife was willing to wear a mask. She went to the doctor we like to go to, our family doctor has retired years ago before COVID. Probably saw it coming. So can't go to him. He was a real doctor. So I went to this conveyor belt. She calls herself a doctor, but she's a conveyor belt between the pharmaceutical companies and me. And looks like she's the person who came in. I thought it was another assistant. She looked like she was maybe 27. And I said, hey, this is something I go through about every year and a half, 2 years, where it goes down in my lungs. Here's how we get rid of it. She says, nope, that won't work. It's just been working my whole life. No, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you this, 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 and this. So I haven't slept in 2 nights because of the coffee, and I need a cough suppressant also, preferably a really good, really good cough syrup with some codeine or something in it to knock me out because I'm not sleeping. I'm coughing. No, we don't do that here. Excuse me? Then how am I not going to cough at night? Oh, well, in 2 or 3 days, this will take effect. I don't want to wait 2 or 3 days. I want tonight to be able to sleep. Oh, well, we don't do that type of medicine here.
We don't do the medicine that actually works.
So, Doug, you got to tap. You got to tap. You got
I was getting, but here's the thing: the tone and the attitude was, "I'm the doctor. You're a peon. Do what I say. These are the meds I'm giving to you. If you don't like it, go somewhere else." But I
Doug,
can't.
time out. Doug, time out.
Let me in without a mask on.
Doug, time out. We got a squeaking in the background, and everyone can hear it. I don't know if it's your mic. It seems to be when you're talking.
It's not me.
Okay.
It's not me.
All right, Andrew,
if there's something going on, I don't know what it is. I left my rubber ducky in the other room.
But it sounds
hey, Brady, is your FBI handler on here?
No, he took the week off.
Okay.
Okay, well, I apologize, but I don't know what to say because.
Well, I think it's when you're moving around and gesticulating, showing your passion for the subject. You're
squeaked off.
Yeah, I'm looking for the squeak off button here.
All right, looks like it's fixed.
Well, we'll find out. Oh, I heard that. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Maybe it's when I get real loud. I don't know. But anyway, that's it. I get too loud.
Well, I'll tell you this. Me and my wife.
It's because I don't have my nice microphone plugged in because I didn't have time to plug it in. And so I'm using the microphone on the computer, and apparently it's a crappy microphone. That's what it's coming down to. Well, but anyway, so here's my thing, though. I believe that the reason why she was not willing to work with me on this is because those are not the meds that she's been trained or she's being paid to give. She had her regimen that I was going to get, and that was that. And that's why I called her a conveyor belt between me and the pharmaceutical companies.
Are you sure you didn't?
And all of them were like super expensive, more than I normally pay.
It sounds to me like you went to like a Publix pharmacy.
No, I went to a regular doctor, but yeah, that
was a joke. That was a
joke. My wife went. Then people she went to, they gave her that substance. Mm-hmm. She is now well. So she only took half of her cough syrup. I'm going to start taking it. But with the codeine in it.
So anyway. What I was going to say, Doug, is you need to get yourself plugged into some of the alternative medical distribution wings we have here in Southern California. With Tara and I both sick this week, a couple of our good friends, Cindy and Cecily, gave me some really good instructions on what to do. And we took some certain kind of specialized kind of vitamin C, special kind of honey lozenges, and some oxidation. And my improvement was in less than 24 hours, was remarkable. There's also doctors that aren't going to play the mass game. We've got a whole network of them. We got, our friend Andrew, different Andrew. He's plugged into that entire network. You should take advantage of that and get out of the medical system as much as you can.
Yeah, my wife and I, we're very natural. And in fact, my wife actually has an Instagram page that is dedicated to all this stuff just because one of our children is vaccine injured. So we're very natural, and I can confirm that natural works. Now, there's a lot of people that make fun, like, oh, were you going to put essential oils on a broken arm or something? Of course not. Don't be an idiot. Like, but doing things more natural, because think about this: back in Moses' day, they didn't have codeine, they didn't have all this other stuff. They had herbs, they had things that the Lord allowed to be around, and they've found ways to have medicine. They had oils for different things. I mean, if you actually if you look into it, you'll see the actual benefits. And I am a witness to the natural stuff actually working, and I don't feel like junk afterwards. So,
Well, Doug,
Okay, well, I've
Doug's
been
little.
coughing so hard that I've torn muscles in my stomach and I have bruising from all the coughing.
Yeah, it's no fun. Doug, your little story kind of segues into one of the two areas I did a lot of research on this week.
Okay.
I've decided I'm going to become one of the world's foremost experts on the Rockefellers. And if you really want to look at the difference between homeopathic and the pharmaceutical-based medical system we have today, it all ties into the Rockefellers. And the way the story really goes, big picture, is when Rockefeller had the monopoly with Standard Oil, he was more than happy to let them break him up with the trust busting of Teddy Roosevelt. He ended up worth more because some of the parts were worth greater than the whole. So now he owns a big stake in a bunch of different oil companies. First thing he does after putting all of his assets in the Rockefeller Family Tax-Free Foundation, so they never have to pay taxes on it again, is he's got a real big PR problem as the world's first billionaire, who's been a cutthroat monopolist. So he hires a PR firm. And they say, what you're going to do is you're going to open up some charities and make it seem like you're the most generous, billionaire in the world. So the first thing they do is they start funding all the medical research companies. All the medical research labs and medical schools all around the country. He who funds the university controls what they teach.
Right.
They immediately did a big PR firm just to destroy holistic medicines. They came up with the term quacks that spread far and wide across the Western world. The reason they did this is, oil is not just about the gas you put in your car. Petroleum is used in so many different things we use, between petroleum-based pharmaceuticals, the entire petrochemical industry, which is why we get GMOs. They have used their regulatory capture, their owning of politicians, to make all this stuff de facto law that you have to use their products. And it's not just the Rockefellers. There's three other major families. You had the Rothschilds, but this was the French Rothschild family that helped invest in Royal Dutch Shell. You had British Petroleum, which was the royal family. And there's a fourth wing to this, but they were all playing the same games of international intrigue, carving up the Middle East. Wherever there was oil, they were using governments to basically allow for them to exploit the resources. They created the idea of scarcity of oil to drive the price high and keep the profits up. There was never any scarcity. My favorite part of it was about 100 years ago, there were engines that could run on either ethanol or gasoline. They could do both. So they outlawed those kind of engines. The problem with ethanol is you could make it out of just about anything organic, including wood chips, corn, you name it. Well, that's competition. And as Rockefeller said, competition is a sin. So they made ethanol illegal and basically destroyed their competition. This is 100+ years of these guys manipulating the entire system. And yes, these are the people that gave you the Great Reset. They're the ones who started all the wars. So,
well, if I may say something, I agree with that. And also it makes you, like, people should start asking why on things like, how come the government is censoring this? How come they are saying, like, you can't use this? Like, there's been a lot of cases where people say, hey, I want a more natural thing, and the doctors are like, no, I can't. Not just like I won't, but I can't. Or, like, for instance, like with the nuclear stuff I've been looking into, nuclear is actually not as bad as people say. Yes, radioactive, all that stuff, but also speculation, because I've not confirmed it, but through physical testing. But supposedly you could hold a uranium or plutonium in your hands and it won't hurt you. It's only if you, I think, ingest it or if it gets in the bloodstream somehow. But like, you can handle it and it'll be just fine. Also, nuclear is 1,000 times more clean than electric energy. Why? So you know,
Burning coal, any of those types of things. I would also, of course, push hydroelectric. I
Yeah.
think that is also a very good way of creating electricity. But nuclear and hydroelectric is the two things they're trying to get away from. They
well,
hate
here's
it.
another thing that's interesting is that in Australia, and this is verified through a company, and they have some testing around here. So the big push is electric is great for everybody. Well, here's some facts. It takes energy to make energy.
Mhm.
The batteries are crazy expensive, and when they catch on fire, the firefighters have to have a special extinguisher because it's burning at, like, I think the firefighter said, like 20,000 degrees compared to a normal car fire that's at like 1,500, 2,000. Like, it's an insane. And sometimes if you submerge in water, it'll take like 30 days to truly put it out. Like, it's insane, right? So it's horribly unsafe. It's horribly expensive. It's not cost effective. It's not.
And we don't have the resources to make enough batteries for everybody.
Right, but
Nope.
here's another thing that what people don't realize is that hydrogen is actually the best alternative, because there's a company in Australia, I believe, that makes hydrogen cars which hydrogen is just as safe, if not safer, than electric or gas. Because I mean, well, what if hydrogen explodes? Fuel combusts, electric cars combust.
And what's the
happens.
exhaust of hydrogen?
Water.
I've been talking about hydrogen since the 70s when I
Yeah.
first started getting into sci-fi and science and stuff like that.
Well, let me say this real quick before I forget, Doug. They were able to get 900 miles out of one car, like out of one like tank.
The problem is it's expensive right now to also produce that. Now that said, the problem is not what we're chasing after. The problem is that it's government that's pushing it, and
'cause they're not making
therefore
money.
what's best isn't rising to the top.
Well, and I'm saying
If
it's not
completely a free market push, then you're going to have competition. You're going to have innovation, and the best thing is going to rise to the top. And I believe it would be hydrogen power.
well,
And
and
it would push the price down if there's competition. But we have government making the push, and they want what they want.
and they want what they want because they're told what to want by the people who are pulling the puppet strings that own the monopolies. Another fun story about that. If you remember back in the 50s, just about every major city had electric trolleys to everyone get around on. It was very efficient. Well, what happened was the monopolist decided to buy that out and put a bunch of gas-powered buses in place. And it was not a profitable deal, but it killed competition. That's what they do. Competition is a sin.
Well, here's another way to look at it, or maybe it's going to go along with what we've been saying. But I mean, at the end of the day, we don't have like who's running the strings of the government? Yes, the families and all that stuff, but the corporations, right? Like, well, who does not want, gas to completely go away? The oil companies. Who does not want hydrogen to be successful, and who does want to get rid of gas cars? Electric. Like, everybody's like, okay, we're going to give you all this money if you pass this legislation. The lobbyists. That's the biggest problem, is that we need to cut that cord.
Well, government and corporations shouldn't be in collusion, first of all. Second of all, and what would avoid this collusion is this: the federal government's got no authority to be involved in this stuff. Let the market do what the market does. They've got no authority. There shouldn't be any collusion. There's no authority for the collusion.
Well, here's something I would like to say. And if they're listening, that's fine. To the FBI and all the people out there who technically should not exist anyway. Instead of looking into Trump for some documents that he rightfully should have, how about you look into Pelosi and her illegal fraud in the stock exchange? How about you look into, Clinton? How about the list of the people who went to Epstein's Island? Where's that? There's so many things that are being pushed under the rug because you're not in the in crowd. That
and it gets back to what I was saying earlier. Who are the auditors? Who's the oversight? The very people who need to be arrested.
The fox in the hen house. That's the
Going to what Doug just said, about government and private enterprise working in collusion. that's the mercantilist system that our founding fathers came here to get away from. That's what Alexander Hamilton imposed upon ourselves. The best example of that, the most obvious one, was the Transcontinental Railroad. And Lincoln was a railroad lawyer for 20 years, which is not usually a very savory profession. If you look at how the railroads, the Transcontinental Railroad was built, it was overcost. It was zigzagged. It had to go to every town. If you're a politician and wanted the railroad to go through, you get a political favor to divert the railroad to your town. It was corrupt all the way. And the Northern Railroad, which was built and would have under cost at twice the speed with private money, went straight. And it was a difference between. It's one of the starkest examples of how inefficient anything the government gets involved with, because you immediately have political favors and graft.
Mm-hmm.
It just shouldn't happen. That's why you got to get the money out of politics. It's job number one. Which, hence the Brady Amendment.
How about you explain what that is, Brady?
Yeah, you want me to do it again?
That's become a regular thing, by the way, with him. It gets brought up almost every time I'm around him anymore. But go ahead.
It's applicable. Yeah, it's very simple. Obviously you can form political parties. It's First Amendment right to freedom of association, everything like that. The issue isn't that people form political parties. The issue is that the money funnels through those parties, and they get to dictate who our candidates are, and therefore which special interests get the favors from politics. So how do we do this? Well, Citizens United seem to indicate that corporations are people. So I said to myself, I go, really? If they were people, they could probably vote. And since they can't, I go, we just make a rule. It says anybody who is going to donate to a political campaign, it can only be a registered voter, period. If you aren't eligible to vote, you cannot contribute to a campaign. You do not get to participate in the democratic process if you are not part of it. That cuts out the corporation money in the PACs really fast. Second part of that is campaign contributions cannot cross state or county lines. Everybody's on record saying, foreign interference in our elections is wrong. Well, I don't care if it's outside the country. I don't want California money flooding Georgia to win the Senate race, and that's what's happening. So no more campaign contributions across state lines. You pick your state, and that's where you can do your contributions. And point three is it's up to the current limits we have are reasonable. That can be talked about it, and you got to make sure you enforce soft dollar contributions. And those laws are in place; they just need to be enforced. This is all doable, and both political parties have jawboned that. Oh yeah, we want to get the money out of politics. We hate Citizens United, but nobody's ever proposed a bill to do anything about it. So they're lying. The power of the taxpayer purse is the entire currency that politicians function on. If they lose that ability to sell votes, you're going to stop attracting the kind of politicians that we don't need. You're going to start attracting honest people that are doing it for the right reasons. Because you can't get rich if you can't take bribes. That's just the way it is.
I think what we should also do, and forgive me if you already said this, I was reading the comments while I was listening, but I mean, back in the day, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't even get paid for this. They just got compensated for their service. I mean, can we not bring that back? I mean, oh, you're a lawyer, you lost this much money. All right, compensation, here's some pay for your travel.
What goes beyond that it's a cultural issue. Our culture is off, so our politics are up. So we have, instead of people going in to serve their country, serve liberty, serve God, serve the people, has become a position of power and an opportunity to get rich. And so who's that going to attract? People who want the power and the wealth, or those opportunities for wealth.
Well, here's another thing.
It's attracting unsavory characters because of what it's become.
Yeah, here's another thing that really was interesting. Corleone Noir, I don't know if you all know who that is. He's a lawyer and a Second Amendment advocate. And he had a video of I don't remember if it was a senator or a congressman. I believe it was probably a senator that said that I guess back in the day, only rich people had guns. So basically the poor shouldn't have them, that. So that kind of goes in with what you're saying. It's the royalty versus the peasants. I mean, that's basically what it's become. We are subjects. We are no longer citizens in their eyes. We are, they know what's best for us. They're like that intrusive in-laws that
only
think
the
they know
rich
everything.
had guns.
Well, I brought this up a few weeks ago.
Wow.
That's addressed by Carol Quigley in Tragedy and Hope. his 1,400-page novel. And I think I talked to you about this earlier, Doug. I may have done it on this show. But throughout history, there's been periods of time where the dominant weaponry was either too expensive for the common folk, and periods where it wasn't. And periods where the most effective weaponry was available to everybody were periods of freedom. So 1776, the musket was the most powerful. Anybody could have one. You get to today, where you got hypersonic missiles and jets, not everybody can afford that. That gives the government more leverage over the people. It was like that in the Middle Ages, when knights were the dominant. You had a feudalist system when knights were the dominant weaponry. And it's always been cyclical like that.
Well, here's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize, and Isaac Bodkin did. He's with T-Rex Arms, another Second Amendment company, or a Second Amendment advocate group. That's a company that makes holsters, and he did a great video about it where I believe it was him. Where basically, and I don't remember everything. Forgive me. I'm totally spitballing this, but that I believe in England, like depending on how rich you were, you're required to have certain arms and armor and all this stuff, and you're required to train and all that stuff. And I was just like, that's better than what we have now. I mean, yes, they're kind of forcing it, but it's encouraging. Okay, you need to have it's encouraging people, regular citizens, even the poor, to have a type of arm and a type of armor and to train.
Well, in America also, the average person had a firearm because firearms were inexpensive because they're readily available and there was competition. Once again, it goes back to being just a free market society.
Yeah. But I mean, with people, saying like, oh, guns are bad and we need to take them away. Well, no. For one, we are the militia. We're supposed to have what we need to fulfill our responsibilities in the Constitution. And we can't do that if we're not, let's see here, if we're not well regulated, or in other words, if we're not in good order.
Right.
So that's where I think a positive thing would be if the government really wants to make a difference. If they really want to stop gun violence, what they need to do is say, okay, hey, instead of making rebates for electric cars, that's a waste of money. How about if you're a person, how about if you go buy a gun, we'll give you a tax break for it or something. They're not making you do it, but if you do it, hey, we'll give you this little added benefit. And if you go train and you have a certificate, we'll give you another tax benefit.
Yeah, but see, that creates individualism and your ability to take care of yourself, and they just don't want that. Government's got to cover everything. It's got to take care of everything.
Yeah, but that's my point, though.
100% dependent.
That's my point, though. They don't care. And that's the thing that people don't see, is that they're like, oh, Mr. Government, come save me. They've proven multiple times, even during the riots, that they don't give a crap about you.
Well, because there's too many people. They've been all about killing human beings since the beginning. There's too many people, and so they're going to kill babies in the womb. They're going to kill people with COVID. They're going to kill people with other things. Oh, I probably just canceled our show. That's what they do. They kill people.
I'll be like Patriot Street Fighter. I'll have like channel 36 up. It's fine. I'll be dodging them. But I mean, like, I even believe that a lot of the shootings are false flags. I'm just being honest, because also the government has documentation that they want to do that. Hello, Operation Northwoods.
Mm-hmm.
That is a verified document that says that the government wants to, or the CIA wants to, has a plan to attack the American people and blame it on somebody else. Oh, hey, the school was shot up.
That's a 1984 thing. The purpose of the war is not to win the war; it's to keep the war going.
You guys,
you always have somebody to blame for everything.
You guys are just doing an amazing job of teeing me up for the stuff I'm researching this week. So I'm just going to jump into Andrew's comment. So,
excuse me.
I discovered a writer this week who I had not heard much about, by the name of Whitney Webb, and she wrote a 2-volume book recently. Came out in September. It's called "One Nation Under Blackmail: The Sordid Union Between Intelligence and Crime That Gave Rise to Jeffrey Epstein." Now, I'm only a few chapters into this. I saw her interview and I go, wait a minute, I got to read this girl's work because she's, basically hitting on the same topics I usually do, talking about the CIA and the mafia and everything like that. But this gal's in her late 20s, and she's done more homework than I'll ever have time to do. And I'm very impressed with her work so far. I think I'm going to be displeased at some of the Republican connections. I believe Donald Trump is going to be mentioned more prominently than one would expect, but I'll let you know when I get to that part, whether I find that viable or not. The part that I really enjoyed was, and you'll remember this from when I talked about the origins of the intelligence agency, she traces it directly back to Operation Underworld in World War II, where Lucky Luciano worked with the naval intelligence to basically patrol the New York harbors against German saboteurs, and they eventually paved the way for the Allies landing in Sicily. And that's when the intelligence agencies first got involved with the mafia. And my premise is that they never let go. They never stopped working together. And I think this book is tying that together better than anything I've seen. But I'm in the early stages and I'm looking forward to it.
Wait, so the premise of the book is that the CIA and the crime world made Epstein possible. Is that what I'm gathering?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, this whole shadow world. If you imagine John Wick, without the hotel.
Let me say this real quick. Did they basically create Epstein to basically have he's the blackmail? Is that what I'm gathering?
Well, I'm not, like I said, I'm not through it, but the picture seems to be that Epstein was just an operative. He wasn't a kingpin. He was kind of selected for this position and kind of grew into his role, became very good at it, but he wasn't the only one.
Okay. Well, here's some speculation real quick. Something I heard. I didn't even look into it. Maybe you'll find out about it, but I guess Aleister Crowley, who's a horrible person, and he also did a lot of stuff to children, from my understanding. Very sick man, also in witchcraft or something else. I don't know. It's all into that stuff that just makes my spirit hurt just thinking about it. But I guess someone said that he was like a British operative for MI6 or something crazy, and that kind of it's like with that, and then with Epstein with the CIA, and then also with the Manson family with Charles Manson with the CIA, because there's, I guess, documentation out there. Someone please verify this for us, or maybe Brady knows, but they would keep getting him out of prison and then keep giving him like LSD or something like that, all part of like MK Ultra and stuff like that. But I just think it's funny that all these horrible people are tied in with people that are supposed to be protecting us. So anyway, go ahead.
No, I would say that's entirely possible when it comes to Manson and those guys like that. We do have the documentation of some of the CIA experiments, and we also, there's probably several programs we haven't heard about yet. At the end of the day, I think it's really important to follow the money, and why are these intelligence agencies involved in this stuff? Who are they protecting? Who are they operating for? And it still points back to this shadow government. And like I said, there's like 6,000 of these super elite families that operate above the law. And so, we spend all of our time arguing right versus left, and left versus right. I'm sorry, right versus left, red versus blue. When we never look up and notice, who wins no matter what. And I think there's a solution though, because the Constitution gave us the path back. And if the states step up and reassert their sovereignty, there's nothing these people can do. We can have a good, clean country again, and we can do it constitutionally. We can do it peacefully.
Is the way that have anything to do with that song called "Burn Baby Burn" by any chance, or no?
I'm not
out there.
I don't see it I don't see it necessary to get to that point, but it probably would, not because that's what we want, but because that's what the other side will push. Because
I believe it.
They want what they want so bad that they're willing to kill for it,
or have us kill each other for it.
Well,
and then they watch from their tower. Speaking of towers, have either of y'all ever read that book that was supposedly about what was it, Man in the Tall Castle or something? Something to do with Hitler and
Man in the High Castle. You talk about the alternative history.
I think so.
Yeah.
I've never read that book, but I keep hearing about it. What was that book about?
What if Hitler had won World War II and America was under a Nazi regime?
I have heard of this one.
Aren't we
And
under a
in
Nazi
fact,
regime?
also, they did a series, I think, on HBO or something like that too.
So
Netflix or
basically,
something.
the book is true because we are under a Nazi regime. I mean, think about it. Think about it. Speculation, people.
No, you're on target. Go ahead.
I'm going to agree with
have
you. when you're done.
vaccines that kill. We have vaccines that are designed to kill people. They have untested toxic things in it. We have brown shirts. It's called Antifa, and the other people. We have what else we got? We have a chancellor who's taken over power.
Yeah, and Community Prepper says there was a movie called Motherland on the same. It was actually called Fatherland, if I remember properly.
That would make sense because Motherland is Russia. Fatherland is Germany.
Fatherland, I believe, was the name of it, and it's based on a book which I read, and it's a good book.
Well, let me know when you're done because I'm about to agree with you, and I'll give you I'll give you some factual points. Well, first thing to remember is who financed and sponsored the Nazis, and I've talked about the American fascists before, but this is the cabal of the Brown Brothers, Harriman clients. That's a Wall Street bank, the law firm Sullivan and Cromwell, who the Dulles brothers helped negotiate the Treaty of Versailles. They financed the Nazis. When Germany's prices crashed, they went in there and bought up all the assets on the cheap. This is the Prescott Bushes involved. These are the same group that tried to overthrow FDR in 1933 in a business plot. That's one Smedley Butler talks about. They're the ones who gave Hitler the go-ahead to become chancellor in 1934. They kept FDR out of World War II as long as they could until Pearl Harbor, in which case they came and joined the war cabinet of FDR, even though they had already tried to remove him. They ran the intelligence agencies, and then when World War II ended, most of the Nazi hierarchy, or a lot of them, ended up in Argentina, other places. A lot of them worked in America, the scientists. So did the Nazis lose? Because those people stayed in power, the people that were behind that. Did the fascists ever go away? The German people sure as heck lost, but the fascists don't seem to have faced a whole lot of justice.
Well, here's the thing: is that didn't the Nazis basically hold their own trial for the Nazis? I mean, I'm pretty sure the judges were not exactly the most unbiased.
Well, the interesting thing about the Nuremberg trials was they got some pretty high-level people convicted, and then we had Americans, operatives, that were overseeing these new German protectorates, and a lot of those sentences got commuted in 1 or 2 years. Some of these people, some of them were, part of the new CIA effort of training anti-communist intelligence operators in Germany, and went and infiltrated, other parts of Europe. I mean, they never stopped working. Just the war ended. They realized, okay, not now. We'll keep working towards our dystopian future. So, no. So your premise is correct. The fascists have never lost. Have never left. These are the same people I'm talking about with the shadow government. What's the definition of fascism? It's the marriage of corporate interests and the government.
Yeah, didn't fascism come from Mussolini anyway? Didn't he define it?
Well, I mean, it was already around. It's an idea that's been around since the beginning of time. But Mussolini definitely tightened up what the definition was, and he used what's called bundling. And basically, all it meant was it bundled all of the operations into a heavy regulatory system where the government controlled the means of production, not by owning it as in communism, but by regulating the hell out of it. It gave the illusion of private enterprise still existing, or private sector still existing. But in reality, government controlled it no different than in a communist country. It's just through regulation.
So in other words, fascism is just oligarchy.
It's socialism by another name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like I always say, all the different
and the method, the end results are the same. How they go about it's different.
Yeah, and the way I always say it is, all of the isms matter not, because they're all different. They're just different versions of tyranny, and they'll use they'll use the methods of any of the given ones to achieve their ultimate goal, which has always been power.
I did want to give a shout out to Bill, Community Prepper. Glad you're there, sir. But and then also want to answer his comment. Motherland, fatherland. Doug, can you define what a mother is? I don't know how to define it, but I know I'm one because I'm called a mother all the time.
Well, no, that's a two-part word. mother is a adjective in that, or is it an adverb, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's a pronoun. I'm not going to be the grammar police here. I digress.
And I'm told I'm number one with wrong finger a lot too.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of that since I joined Twitter.
Yeah.
Man, I joined Twitter. Nothing happened.
No.
That's all right, though. I'm not as famous as y'all, though. That's okay.
I've got a certain penchant for upsetting a certain type of people with little one-line comments.
Well, all right. I'm gonna pause our rabbit hole we're going down. I'm gonna ask the people in the comments and the people watching later, what questions do you have? What topics do you want us to talk about and research and cover for you? So that way we can, I mean, everything we're talking about is great, but maybe there's something that you'd prefer to hear. So we'd like to hear from y'all. And, don't be afraid to type away and whatever. And, so just because we'd like to hear from you. It's always good to get positive feedback, or even, negative feedback doesn't hurt nobody. It just makes us better, but also so we could get some more topics and, really answer the questions that you need answered, and stuff like that. So it looks like we're at 4 minutes left.
Well, let me make a comment then on one item in the news cycle real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because it's a great example of the left looking for right-wing demons that don't exist. I mean, basically, they are looking to prove that their opposition, which is you and I, they call us right-wing. That's not the right term, but we'll argue that another day. That we are dangerous, that we are crazy, we are gun-toting, violent people, and these guns that we worship are bad. And so they thought they had an opportunity to pounce all over it because there was a shooting at a gay bar in Colorado. And everything looked like they could blame it on those crazy right-wingers until the filing in the courts was made. And it turns out that Aldrich, the shooter, was,
a gay liberal?
His own community because he claimed to be non-binary. So much for the crazy, violent right-winger with a gun shooting up the gay club. And so, and it's, of course, and you can't challenge them because, it's bigoted by the woke to deny anyone's claim of identity.
They just won't mention it in the report.
Yeah, so they put themselves kind of in a, they strangled themselves with their own rules on this one, which pretty much will leave any hate crime charges off the table with this guy. But see, that's what happens. They reside in a world of untruth and fantasy. And when that happens, the facts don't add up, and you never really are able to get what you think you want.
Well, I mean, they're like that hysterical woman. And for the women in the comments and watching, I do apologize. I'm not talking about you, but
or he might be. Go ahead.
But like that woman that's just hysterical and just so like, that's what I like. They're
all they know is they want what they want, but it doesn't add up, and they can't figure out why.
It's been effective. It's been effective because they're painting the narrative that MAGA Republicans are homophobic and want LGBT whatever people dead. When we're specifically saying, please stop. We don't care what you do. Please stop grooming your children.
Now we're canceled.
They can't allow that narrative to end because, and you're seeing it play out on Twitter, almost every conversation. And it's there's no rhyme or reason to these arguments. It's no, you're a maggot. You want to kill me. Well, no, I'm not a maggot. I may vote for Trump, but I can think for myself. And I don't want you dead. I just want you to stay away from kids. Don't sexualize children. So they can't lose that argument. So they're going to keep doubling down on it. They think that's how they did it as well as they did in the elections, when we know that's not the truth. But that's their main narrative. That's all they have to run on because they certainly sure as heck can't run on their own record or their own ideas. It's got to be that we're the violent. And plus it justifies, all of the surveillance state and everything like that.
Yeah. And I'm 100% with you. I mean, it's a disgusting, immoral time that we live in for sure. But here's something I wanted to say, not on that, but on Doug said violence earlier, like we're violent. We actually need more violence. Now, hear me out. Okay. I'm a person who's well trained and versed in weaponry and tactics and other things like that. There's a difference between violent and dangerous. Okay. Good men that are violent are someone that you want. It's a controlled violence, right? My hands are gentle towards the innocent, but towards the predators, I will crush and pound your bones into powder. Dangerous people are people that have good intentions or that are weak-minded, that prey on others. Doesn't have to be in any, you know, catch a predator kind of thing, but it could be preys on the elderly for, whatever, for their own benefit. It just has to be they take advantage of the vulnerable, and that's dangerous, right? Are y'all tracking with what I'm saying here? So violence is something good, and they don't realize that, or they know that, but people are so associated with violence in one way. Same thing with intimacy, right? When people think of the word intimacy, they think of sex, but that's not the case. Intimacy, that's a part of intimacy, but there's other parts. There's non-sexual physical intimacy, there's intellectual intimacy, there's emotional intimacy, there's spiritual intimacy. Really, it's just like, basically what I'm saying is that they're taking
it's intimacy
words.
as friends. That's we have our verbal intercourse right now.
Hey, I think we just found our topic for next Friday.
Yeah, Convention of States. I saw that.
What do you guys think? You guys want to do that? Let's schedule it for next week. Andrew, we're going to do. Let's do the show next week on Convention of States.
Sure.
All right. We'll need to plug it that way so that everybody will want to be here.
All right. Well, we'll talk about it. Let's talk about it during the week. We'll have. Because I know Doug and I could probably both do an hour straight monologue on the topic, so we got to split it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Andrew, how firm are you on a Convention of States? You want me to send you some stuff?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's fine. As long as you also send me the Sullivan and Cromwell stuff I've been asking for.
Yeah, I'll get there. I was sick all week. That's my excuse.
But let me say this real quick before we. I know I'm the one that's actually dragging us on now. I just wanted to just drive that thought home. Like, hopefully people are understanding and hearing what I'm saying. That, that words are very precious, and the manipulation of them is what causes problems. And basically what we're doing is we're creating a word called toxic masculinity, but masculinity is not toxic. It's,
hey, that's what won World War II. That's what won World War I. That's what won the Revolutionary War. I want some masculinity.
But here's the thing, though. Those men are violent, but they're not dangerous. That's the main point of that last thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's what I was saying with all this stuff. It's your what's the word? Interpretation, context is so important, and they know that. So that's why they use words like violence. They use key words that's going to trigger people, but also they misuse them. Just because you're violent, do you know who's also violent? Decorated SF soldiers, decorated Marines, decorated Air Force. They're violent. They have to use physical violence for protection of the innocent. They're not dangerous. They're violent. Now, the guy that sells the guns to Julio and the gang down the street, that's dangerous. Anyway, I'm done. So that's
it's a good note to end on. I don't have a whole lot of closing thoughts because I dumped a bunch of everything I wanted to say when I came on. I've already had to say because you guys teed me up so well. So thanks, everyone. Good to see you.
What about you, Doug? You got any closing thoughts? I already said mine. So
you nailed it. I think I have joked about the toxic masculinity in the past and said exactly what I said earlier. It was toxic masculinity that turned out not to be so toxic because it was necessary for violent men who were masculine, who were willing to fight to save liberty. So sometimes it's necessary. Of course, we want it to be a last resort. Even the founding fathers wanted to be a last resort. They were appealing to the king. They were appealing to Parliament. They were appealing to heaven. But in the end, when the British came to take their guns and their ammunition, that was one step too far.
Well, with that, I'm sorry, Doug, did you have anything else to say, or did I cut you off?
No, unless you want me to do my closing.
That's actually what I was going to say next. So,
all right, united we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you.
Cheers.
All right. See you next week.